So just prior to the release of this video, we had a big $250,000 CSGO tournament which took place in Jönköping, Sweden, which was a partnership between Dreamhack with their Dreamhack Winter event for 2015, as well as Face It, who used this event to run their Season 3 finals, or Stage 3 finals, whatever you want to call it. And of course, it's a big tournament. Like I said, $250,000 on the line, 100 grand to the first place team, 50 grand to second place, and then it goes down from there. So a big prize pool, lots of big teams out there. You know, the top teams were certainly in attendance, or most of them at least. Especially when you look back at Cluj and some recent results, you certainly had a good field of teams participating. And there were several storylines that took place at this event, but what I really wanted to focus on in this video was the storyline of the two finalists for this event, which were Fnatic and Luminosity. Now, a big reason why I want to focus on these two teams is, well, for one, it focuses on the finals, which is the biggest part of the event, of course, who actually finished at the top. It's also a big story because both these teams debuted a new five. With Luminosity Gaming making some roster changes right before the event, which was really unexpected on the timing of the roster change. I think most people figured at some point they would make one because they had kind of plateaued, so to speak, but didn't expect it to come this rapidly or right before a big event. Then, of course, Fnatic also made a pretty big roster change, bringing in Dennis in place of Pronax. So there's, of course, those storylines there. So I kind of want to talk about maybe what we saw, what were some differences, what is the outlook for both these teams going forward, as well as just talking about the tournament run for both these teams, as it was kind of a true David versus Goliath story. I mean, I think a lot of people figured that Fnatic had a good chance to make it to the finals based on the talent that they have, whereas certainly no one expected Luminosity to make it that far with, you know, the situation of their roster, as well as how their tournament started at the very beginning on day one. So I think it's just a really cool story, and I want to tell, you know, kind of both sides of it. Take a look at Fnatic, take a look at Luminosity, take a look at how they made it to the finals, and then talk about the grand finals, and again, just kind of address some things that I noticed, as well as what their outlooks may look like going forward. And so we'll start off with Fnatic as far as their tournament run. Not much to say when it comes to the beginning of the tournament. The way this, format worked was, the initial matches were best of ones, then the decider and the elimination were best of threes. But like, I guess the upper bracket portion of the group stage in the GSL bracket that they use basically meant that you could play two best of ones and make it to the semifinals, which is exactly what Fnatic did. First, they obviously had that really crushing beating of Luminosity on Dust 2 to kick off the event with 16-0. Just perfect CT side, not giving up any rounds, and of course just winning the pistol round on T side, ending the game right then and there. And then later on, they played NIP, the exact same map. This time they start Terra side, come up with 12 rounds on the T side, and then they quickly close out with 4 rounds on the CT side, only giving up 1 round, I think, in the second half. And they win that 16-4. So there's really not too much to read from these best of ones. Fnatic simply just bullied people, did what they wanted. They weren't really challenged. They didn't really meet much true resistance. And so you couldn't really get a good read off of them because they weren't really tested. I mean, the best that you could figure is kind of getting some ideas on like how they might play these maps a little bit. So, for example, kind of trying to figure out what their CT side or T sides were sort of going to look like going forward. Was Dennis simply going to replace Pronax in the spots that Pronax used to play? Were they going to shift some other personnel around and just find new positions for their whole lineup? And what you saw on their CT side against Luminosity was, it seems like Dennis just kind of took over Pronax's spot, playing towards the pit and kind of anchoring the A-bomb site. Everyone else pretty much played their normal positions in their normal style, right? I mean, you still got Krems anchoring B, you still had Olaf kind of playing that mid-B rotator. Got JW wandering around, and then Flesha kind of being that mid-A rotator. So, I mean, it looked pretty much the same. It was highly effective, and, they just shut Luminosity out. Not much to say there. Now, on the game versus NIP, where they just wrecked from the Terra side, again, they didn't really get tested, so there really wasn't much to say. They pretty much just marched up Cat, waltzed out long. They just, rushed B, the tunnels into the B bomb side. I mean, pretty much whatever they wanted. I mean, they were very hyper aggressive. They bullied NIP, and there wasn't much to say. I will say that you did see JW kind of change a bit. I feel like in the past you'd always see him with an op kind of patrolling middle, while you would see kind of the rest of the action take place. JW would hold middle for quite some time, whereas I didn't really see JW with the op hardly at all this game. I know that there has been this trend in the recent past, where it seems like Olaf Meister has picked up the op a lot more and JW hasn't used it as much. But at this event, it seemed like he didn't use it at all. In fact, the only time I really remember him using it was maybe on the CT side of Cobble versus Luminosity in the grand finals. Other than that, it seemed like he didn't touch it at all. Even on maps where we expect to see him use it a lot, like Dust 2, this map, or like Inferno, for example, which we'll get to that a little bit later, didn't see him using it a whole lot. So that was kind of the big change. Even saw him taking some solo positions, just kind of lurking B-tones while the rest were working, like middle and catwalk and things like that. So yeah, there certainly was a bit of a difference in his play as far as kind of seeing how, they wanted to play their T side. You just saw a lot of Dennis, Olaf Meister, and Crims just bunching up together as a pack and just, kind of hitting either middle out the double doors or hitting the catwalk. And that was kind of their main thing. Just, I guess very kind of default oriented. I guess you don't really see too much crazy stuff on Dust 2 T side anyway. It's very similar style for most teams. Just, a lot of spawn-based aggression at long A or spawn-based aggression at B, or just working the middle and catwalks. So, again, not really too much to read from the group stage here. From Fnatic, they get 2 big best-of-1 wins and just move on to play against Virtus Pro in the semifinals. And this is where they, I guess, begin to get tested. The maps are Mirage, Inferno, and Cache. First map being Mirage, which this actually was a win for Virtus Pro, 16-11. You did see Fnatic have a pretty good T side here where they got 8 rounds, like a pretty solid T side, but weren't able to get it done on the CT side, only getting 3 rounds, giving up 9. So, the way this kind of went is in the first half, Fnatic are able to win the pistol on their Terra side, go up 2-0, but with VP winning the third, they, reset the economy here of Fnatic, and they actually take a lead 3-2. But then, money gets back in order, and we start seeing Fnatic get to establish themselves a bit here on the Terra side, and we still see a lot of Olaf Meister playing this mid-control type position quite often, which is what he's always been known for, especially like trying to get up into ladder room or what have you, or connector, and just, cutting off rotates, causing a disturbance while the rest of the team sets up for a big upper B hit or some type of A split. You still saw that play from Olaf Meister. He still was very involved in middle in those positions, and so this is just a very similar play style from Fnatic, who was always a very mid-control oriented team on Mirage. I guess there's like 2 styles of team on Mirage, right? One that is very set on these heavy A executes with the smoke walls and things of that nature, or a team that's very mid-control oriented that bases most of their play off of getting control of middle and running a site split off of that with whatever picks they can get. And we know that in the past with Pronax, this is a team that was very default-oriented most of the time, and it was just, what is this team is given, just reading the round, seeing what they what opportunities that their opponent presents them, whether it be a mistake that they make or a duel that they take that, goes favorable for Fnatic or what have you. And that was one of the big questions about Fnatic coming into this event was, how are they going to be tactically, right? We know they have the firepower. We know they have a lot of talent. It seems like one of the big reasons why they made their move to bring in Dennis over Pronax was to add some more firepower to the team, as well as, I guess, because there was apparently some type of, personality clashes or what have you, where people weren't getting along. I'm not really sure all about that. It's just what I've heard. I don't have any info on the insides of the team, but I think a lot of people were wondering, is this team still going to be able to perform on T sides without Pronax's ability to be there with them and read the round and make these, adjustments? Are they still going to be able to do it with Flusha being the in-game leader? How much is Flusha being the in-game leader going to affect his individual fragging ability? Will he be able to handle it? We know I think it was the PGL kickoff event way earlier in the year where he had done some in-game leading but gave it back to Pronax because he couldn't handle it. He was struggling in some matches, and he wound up just saying, take it back, Pronax, or at least that's the storyline that I kind of heard. And we know in the past when he did in-game leading, it hurt his fragging significantly. So is this trade-off going to work? You bring in Dennis, who's going to add some firepower, so even if Flusha goes down a bit, maybe that's okay. But are they actually going to be able to perform on T sides? Is the calling going to work? How much does Vuggo really play into the calling of his team, right? Because we've heard lots of debate about how much Vuggo really contributes to the tactics of this team or how they work strategically. And it's very hard to measure that, right? There's no real metric we can use to measure a coach's influence in the game or the way that they dictate the success of the team that they're coaching. It's very hard to read that or measure it. And I still don't know if we'll ever really figure that out, to be honest, unless we get some reports from the team on what they think or what they say Vuggo did or didn't do. But regardless, good to see Fnatic still keeping a similar mid-control style here on Mirage with Olaf being able to do his thing in middle. I will say you didn't see Flusha lurking A as much anymore, which is kind of what he normally did on these mid-controls. He kind of filled in more where Pronex used to play, kind of supporting the mid-control with Olaf Meister on many different occasions. You also saw Dennis pairing up with Olaf Meister a lot on Terra's sides, and this was just in general throughout the entire map pool. You saw a lot of Dennis and Olaf working together. Only exception might be a bit of Inferno, but certainly here on Mirage and on Dust 2, they were certainly working together a lot, with Dennis being, I guess, right there with Olaf just taking entry and stuff like that. You did see Flush is still taking some classic lurking positions when they were doing some type of heavy B hits or something like that, but you also saw Dennis used a bit in this way. And so it seemed like the roles weren't like super clearly defined. People weren't always exactly where you expected them to be. In compare with the old Fnatic, where you could almost know exactly where everyone's going to be on default almost every single round. The only exception might be JW, who kind of wanders around, or Pronex, who might wander around a bit. But they had a good mixture. They had a good playbook here. I mean, they had, these mid-control tactics, as I mentioned, but they also mixed in some really fast sight hits on both sides of the map. But then they also were able to slow it down and do this more just slow control of the map. So good variety here and a good T side on Mirage against Virtus Pro. But CT things didn't work out. They won the pistol, but then they lose the second round. And at this point, VP take a one-round lead. As far as their CT side setup, obviously you're going to see some changes in personnel on their CT side Mirages due to the roster change. But I would say they switched things out a lot. So JW is still playing mid, but now you see Flusha playing more towards like the mid-A connector, whereas before he used to play B. And now Krims, who used to be playing the A-bomb site in this situation, is actually now playing over at B, being like a B-bomb site anchor. And Olaf Meister, who also used to play over in the A-bomb site with Krims, is now over at the B-bomb site playing with Krims, Olaf Meister and Krims over on the B side. And so now Dennis is kind of taking Krims' position over in the A site. So you're seeing a lot of changes here. Basically, you just saw a complete swap where Olaf and Krims still paired together, but now playing the B site instead of the A site. And then Flush also changing his position. So pretty much only JW stayed the same. And then obviously Dennis just comes in for a new position. He didn't really have the previous one, so there's not much to say there. So you get to at least get an idea of maybe how Fnatic's going to approach their CT side of Mirage, but it could certainly change. We actually saw them change their CT setup on Inferno mid-tournament between the two different best-of-threes they played against Virtus Pro and against Luminosity, which we'll talk about that a bit later. So nothing's really set in stone, it seems like. But obviously struggling on their CT side here, only come up with just a couple of rounds. Actually only come up with 3 rounds, and one of which was the pistol, and another was like a crazy force buy with the CZ, where JW had this crazy kill at the B-Mom side. So when it came to like actual rifle rounds, they really struggled on their CT side against Virtus Pro, no doubt about it. So then we move on to Inferno, where we see them start out on the CT side, and we see them have one of their classic big monster CT sides here in Inferno. They get 13 rounds. This is obviously a trademark of Fnatic to be one of these lockdown CT scenes, especially on Inferno. But we did see some changes in how they set up their CT side. So Flush is still playing the archway, position, so that's actually the same. But in this first time we see them play in front on the CT side, we do see Krims actually playing pit in the apartments, whereas it used to be kind of a B-bomb side anchor with Olaf Meister being that rotator, which Olaf Meister still played that position in this event, though you did see him pick up the op a lot more and kind of play over towards A in middle, where Flusha would take his position at B during those time periods. Whereas before, you used to see a lot of JWs in the op, especially in the lane position. He's one of the few operas that would really trend more towards the lane side of mid as opposed to playing over towards the arch side, as most operas would. Though you do have a couple operas, particularly Fallen, we'll talk about later, who actually uses the op at B almost all the time, which is also a rarity. So yeah, you saw JW still playing lane, but basically no opping. And like I said, you'd see Olaf take that position a lot. So Dennis takes over as the B anchor for Krims. So it's actually kind of a similar swap to what we saw in Mirage, where like Krims switches the site that he's anchoring and Dennis comes in and takes his old spot, just like Mirage basically. And so that was kind of interesting to see. But then again, later on, they actually swap it back against Luminosity, where you see Dennis go play over towards pit and the apartments, and Krims takes his position back anchoring the B-bomb side. So it seems like they're still toying around with this, and so we're getting kind of our first look at what they're thinking about doing, but it seems like it's not really set in stone. But yeah, I mean, they have a dominant CT side here. Like I said, 13 rounds. Very, very good play from all off JW and Krems. This is especially good for JW, who I know had some tough events between the Gfinity Champion of Champions and Cluj and such. And so to see him kind of get out of that slump and put up a good performance at this event, which kind of starts here on this map. I mean, obviously they had the best of one victories, but that was stat padding for everyone here. This is like one of their true tests, and we see JW come up big, and Olaf and Krems, per usual, playing well. Now, they switch over to their T side. They're already having 13 rounds. When we see them set up in their default here on the T side, pretty similar to what their old default was, where Dennis just kind of takes over Pronex's position. You still have Flesha kind of lurking or playing towards B. JW still floating around mid, and the rest working alt mid apartments control, and they just set up default. They just get control of apartments. They maybe take some engagements at brackets of mid, and they just kind of read the round from there, and that's exactly what you saw them do here, though they didn't have to do much in this game on the T side of Inferno, right? They already had that big CT side, so there wasn't a whole lot of need to do a lot, but basically, the way they closed on this game was just being able to get into mid attacks on the A side of the map, get some favorable duels, and just overpower their opponent with their aim. And that's basically what we saw here to get a pretty solid Inferno win against Virtus Pro. And then they go on to play Cash, where again they start on the CT side. Again, they have another big CT side. They get 11 rounds. This includes winning the pistol and getting the 3-0 start. We again see some shift in how they play the CT side. Where we see Krems now anchoring the A-bomb side over towards like quad and the MBK spot and such, whereas in the past we used to see him being more of a B-bomb side anchor. So again, we're seeing Krems change his position on almost every single map on the CT side as opposed to what we're used to seeing. I guess the only exception, at least at the maps we saw at this tournament, was that he kind of went back on Inferno between the two best of threes. And so now you have Flusha anchoring the B-bomb site, whereas he used to be kind of like a highway player while Pronex anchored the A-bomb site. So you're seeing changes there. Dennis takes over at the A-bomb site, I guess kind of in place of Pronax to a degree. Seems like pretty similar positions from Olaf and JW, though again you're seeing Olaf opping pretty much all the time and JW not really opping at all. So that's pretty much just us getting at least a read on how Fnatic might be setting up their CT sides for the future. And so, yeah, they get 11 rounds here on the CT side of Cash, so a pretty good start. They win pistol and get a 3-0 start in the second half. They go up 14-4. So, again, not really being tested so much on this map, not really having to put in a lot of work on the terror side as they had already done so well with the CT side, and then getting a pistol to get like a super huge lead. They do give up 5 rounds before closing out the game, but they still get the 2 rounds they need to close the game before it gets too out of hand. When you look at them setting up on their T side, again, we're looking to see how they're changing things up. You still see Krems playing the door pretty much all the time, or doubling up with Flusha, like over towards the B side of the map on their default. So that's still happening. Flusha's still over on the B side. That's what you expect. I would say maybe Olaf changed a bit just because he's opping a bit more. So now he's the one getting boosted up on the boxes with the op, looking for picks, where JW kind of takes over. Like towards A main and such like that, but you also still see the occasional situations where Olaf is kind of soloing up mid with a rifle to backstab highway, and so basically I would just say their T side looks very similar, a little bit of swapping going on, again playing very default oriented and just kind of feeling out the map, but still pretty A heavy as well. And they close out and they beat VP and they move on to the grand finals off of this. So I guess to sum up this portion of the video talking about Fnatic, we learned a bit about how they're experimenting with CT sides on where they want personnel to be. We still see them very similar Terra style, though I don't think we really saw them get tested too much in the beginning part of this tournament. But nonetheless, at least we're getting our first look at Fnatic on LAN. We're starting to get an idea of their mentality about how they want to set the team up going forward. And it was a good run for them to get to the grand finals, especially, beating a good team like Virtus Pro in a 2-1 series to make it there. I mean, while the best of ones didn't really get much out of it there, we do see them play a pretty good series against Virtus Pro. So let's talk about Luminosity's trip to the finals here at Dreamhack Winter 2015. First of all, coming into the event, it was obvious that most people didn't expect much, right? And they had good reason not to expect much. His team made a roster change right before the event, just a few days before they traveled over to Sweden. They swapped out Bolts and Steel for FNX and Taco. Now, again, I think roster moves were certainly a good idea, and I think most people would agree with that. It was just the timing of it was quite odd to see them do it right before a big event. You think it'd be better for them to wait until maybe possibly before the ESL ESEA finals, or just wait until the end of the year before going into 2016. At least if you want to give yourself your best chance to perform well. Because remember, that's not like they were doing badly. We saw them get a lot of good best of one victories throughout the year. They played some really close series against Navi and best of threes, but ultimately lost those series. They did have one best of three win against Titan at SIVO. So it seemed like they were making some progress, but they were still kind of hitting that wall of being able to put up some consistent best of three performances, certainly. But you would think that with how close the series were, that maybe they just needed extra 10% out of their lineup to really close out a game and get there. It was like a mental thing, not necessarily a talent thing. But nonetheless, they decided to make the move right before this event. And there was a couple of good things about doing this move, I suppose. So for one, you get to give your new players some experience in international competition before you really start focusing in on the main thing about this, which is transitioning into 2016 with the new lineup. You're giving your guys some experience right off the bat just to get them used to playing against these types of teams and those types of environments. So that's good to just get these guys ready for next year, so to speak. I know they also are going to be boot camping for a week or something like that after the event was over in preparations for the ESEA ESL finals that take place in December in the United States. So, boom, like you're in Europe. You're now giving your new lineup, a chance to boot camp against European teams for a week. So that's certainly great. Maybe that wouldn't have logistically worked out had they have waited until later to make the roster change. So that's another perk there. So, I mean, there's a couple of reasons why this makes sense, but I certainly don't expect them to do well at the event. If anything, it's just a learning experience and them getting a chance to boot camp in Europe after the event's over, and this is just going to let them set up their team, basically, for next year before the break, so to speak. And as the tournament kicks off, seems like it becomes more evident, right? They just get absolutely crushed by Fnatic on Dust 2. They get 16-0'd. Not even really much to talk about here. And then their next game, because of that, is they have to go up and play against Envious, which is a team that just won Clues. They're considered the best team in the world. These teams, I guess, have a somewhat similar map pool in the sense that they're both willing to play Inferno and Dust 2 and things of that nature. Certainly Envy isn't as known for Mirage, whereas Luminosity is certainly a team that's known for Mirage. So, you're probably going to get some unfavorable maps against this team as well, especially if you're willing to play Inferno. That means you're going to catch them on a really good map for them. And so this is just not looking good for Luminosity whatsoever. But we see the series kick off on Mirage. And at the very least, we're going to get to see what does this mean? Like, how are they going to change their personnel? How are they going to change their tactics and their mindset for both sides of the map? What does Taco and Fnatic bring, and what do they want to change? And here on Mirage, you start on the CT side. You immediately kind of see how they want to change up position. So FNX basically just takes over Bolt's spot over the A-bomb site, where Taco takes over for Steel. So they seem to just kind of immediately just plug into Bolt and Steel's old positions. You do see Cole doing a lot of double opping, which we did see him do on some maps like Dust 2 and Train maybe. But we didn't necessarily see them run double op so much on Mirage. We see it a lot more on this particular time. We still see Fur, playing that connector position, being really aggressive. And because of this, he's either getting a lot of information, or maybe he's actually winning duels out on mid to deny mid control and give his team a good advantage. We see a lot of that. We still see Cole being very pushy on the catwalk, which we would always kind of see. So basically very similar CT side to what we saw from Luminosity in the past. It seemed like Taco and Fnatic just kind of filled in, or FNX filled into these positions from the previous players, and that was pretty much it. And they play a great CT side. They get 10 rounds on the CT side. Just an all-around good game for these guys. What can you say? Only FNX really struggled in this game, to be honest, and even that wasn't that bad. Now, we switch over to the terrorist side. We see a lot of A stuff. I mean, we did see Fur looking over towards B a lot more, which is a little bit odd. Usually don't see him playing that position. Cole was playing inside the Palace a lot. The rest playing A ramp. We did see them being a lot more aggressive, and per their interview they did whenever they made the roster change, where they talked about Taco like being an entry fragger for this team, they certainly did make it a priority for Taco to take, take entry positions, certainly. And we saw this on Dust 2 as well against Fnatic, but obviously didn't get them anywhere, getting 16-0. But here and throughout the rest of the event, you certainly see Taco taking priority on being kind of the first guy into the places that they're most focused on executing and being out there. And you do see them being a bit more aggressive. I mean, this is a team that's very much known for their slower, more methodical style. And granted, they still were doing that style. You know, their root or base play was certainly like that. I think you particularly noticed this against TSM on Overpass later on, but still, there were certainly moments where they looked a lot faster pace than you would expect from them. And, of course, they didn't have much to do on this particular game, T side, because they had done so on the CT side, but they close out the game, and there you have it. So we move on to Cobble, and they start on the Terrace side here. They win pistol. They go up 3-0. I would say that one thing I did notice different was I used to see Fur kind of being that long B platform player on most of their default setups. Just kind of getting on the long B platform looking for picks over there, whereas maybe Cold will be on the other side of the map, and that's how they work their default. You got Cold and Fur at the different sites, working those extremities, Fawns in between, and they're just working on what they're given. But we saw Fur being used a lot more in alert position. Like when A hits were going on, Fur was kind of playing the drop down, the cutoff rotates, kind of like that happy position from Envy. Or you would see him on long B hits. He would be the one guy that's playing drop and kind of coming down late and trying to, once again, cut off the rotates. Or once, this guy playing near drop down has to worry about the long B platform play, that's when Fur sneaks up behind and backstabs them. So you saw him used a lot more in a lurking role than kind of in a semi-entry position as what he was used before. So you're kind of, and this is because Taco, again, taking priority and being an entry fragger, so you're kind of seeing how this affects the team and how they play. We see them have some pretty sick tactics, actually, on this map, given the situation. I remember there was one round, I think it was the 9th round of the game, where they had this really great fake where they kind of executed towards B, got into drop down, got into connector, and then wound up hitting the A bomb site. This came after a tactical pause, and they only had Tech 9s, and they ran a good, successful play to win around here. Then, obviously, in the 11th round, just a couple of rounds later, we saw this really, really cool hit that I've never really seen before on Cobble. I would say that the metagame of T-side Cobble is pretty stale. It's mostly just long B hits, maybe a little bit of action in the drop-down room, and then there's some smoke walls you'll see teams use on A at door and balcony and get to the A-bomb site. Really, the only teams I've seen push the meta of the map was like Virtus Pro, who created kind of some new smoke walls on the A-bomb site in the middle of this past year. But this is Luminosity pushing the meta of the map. You saw them use this kind of smoke wall on top of the mid-slope at A to be able to get some players up the mid-slope and actually into connector to the double doors without anybody playing site or along A or anywhere in that area really being able to do much about it. And they get into the connector, and they use that with 2 people waiting inside long B to come out, and they split the B bomb site. So this is really creative. I don't think I've seen this before, period. And despite the fact they have such little time together, they're still putting up these nice, well-orchestrated executes. And it was really cool to see. And they have, a pretty good T side here. I think they managed to get 7 rounds on the Terrace side here on Cobble in the first half. So well done here. But when they flipped over to the CT side, really, really struggled, right? They only get 1 CT round. We did at least get an idea of how they wanted to set up their CT side, which you basically just saw Taco and FNX fill in for Bolts and Seal over at B. So again, similar to, I guess, what you saw on Mirage, you just see them just kind of get plugged into Bolts and Steel's old spots, and that was pretty much it. That was really all we got from it. Really poor CT side. Envy just kind of walks all over them, and they win this game pretty big, 16-8 in favor of Envy. So now we go on to map 3, which is going to be Inferno. Now, when you think about Inferno, this is obviously a great map for Envy. There's certainly no doubt about that. But this is a map that Luminosity has shown some ability on. In the past, we did see them, but prior to this event, being able to get a win against Fnatic on it at Cluj, of course. That was probably their most famous result on Inferno before the roster change. Saw them have a close game against Titan on it at the SIVO Season 8 event. And in general, in the NA scene and in their online matches, they've looked pretty good on Inferno. So now we come into this, and what are they going to be able to do with Taco and FNX now on Inferno? What is going to be the deal here? And we see them start on the Terrace side, where they eventually get 8 rounds. So, I mean, really, really big T side here from Luminosity. They've always been known to be more of a Terra-sided team, I suppose. And they do well here. Again, winning pistol to go up 3-0 right off the bat. We do see FNX and Taco used at B a lot on default, while the rest are fighting for mid control. So, again, kind of plugging into the old positions of Steel and Bolts, I guess you could say. You see them have some really disciplined B hits with the Molotovs and such, which is what this team's always kind of done. As well as just these mid-control grabs they like to do, just getting control of brackets and using that. It's a very default-oriented, again, which is true to the history of Luminosity. We see that still in effect with just Taco and FNX filling into the empty positions. And they show what looks to be pretty great chemistry for a team that's only been together for a short time. Just a lot of good play here, a lot of good teamwork. And I think this is where you really get to see the value that FNX adds to this team as he comes onto the team, according to the interviews, as kind of a lurker, I guess more of a supportive player. Taco is kind of the primary entry force. Cold and Fur, we know what they're capable of as being high-impact riflers. And so FNX is kind of like, I wouldn't say the oddball out, but he's not really in a main position. He might be lurking. He might just be like the third or second guy into a site to try to, help out and trade and win duels. But this also puts him in a lot of late-round situations. And we see him clutch big time on this Inferno game. He had several 1 versus 2s here on Inferno against Envy. And we know FNX has a lot of experience in the history of CS, from 1.6 days and all that good stuff. But this is still his first time on a big stage in CSGO. And he delivers for this team throughout the entire event. I think when the event was over, he had pretty similar numbers to Fur as far as like rating and KD ratio and things like that. So he certainly... This is where you first begin to see like FNX really step up and show his worth, as in this map on Inferno, and he shows it for the rest of the event. Just proves to be a great pickup for this team, and I guess the point I'm getting at from watching this T side of Inferno. From there, with their 8 rounds, they win 3-0 start on the CT side, again winning pistol and getting the 3-0 start to go up 11-7. And now we're getting to see how do they want to do their CT side. So we see Taco taking over at Pit, FNX taking over at Lane, Fur still playing Arch per usual, Fallen floating with the op, but typically playing as a B rotator, which is, again, very classic to what this team has always done, and then Cold being kind of a B bomb side anchor. So, again, Taco and FNX pretty much just filling in the positions for the old player Steer and Bolts. Not much of a change in the way they set up their personnel. But we see them, playing fairly strong here. I mean, they gave up 4 rounds kind of in the middle of the half after they got that 3-0 start, but they closed the game pretty comfortably. And I think here's also where you notice in this series, because obviously they got crushed against Fnatic, but in this series and throughout the rest of the event, you notice just how sick this team is on pistol rounds. I think when you look at all the pistol rounds that took place during this event, they either won the pistol and got a 3-0 start, or if they lost pistol, they almost always won the second or third round. Like, they were just insane on, like, the way they would kick off halves on winning pistols or winning force buys. They were just nuts on it. They were just doing it all the time. I think as you see me talk about the other series, you'll hear me mention several more times how they won a pistol or won a force buy. It was just, crazy stuff for them. And they had a good play from pretty much their entire lineup here, and they beat Envy. A huge upset, 2-1, including beating them on Inferno to end the series. So this is just a great showing from the whole team, but this is, I think, where you really notice FNX. So now they move on to play NIP to get to see who's going to actually make it out of the group here. Again, we're going to see Mirage played. It is the first map of the series. This is going to be a 16-10 victory for Luminosity. They start out on the CT side. They do lose the pistol, but then they win the second round, and they wind up winning 12 rounds overall on the CT side. Very similar play to how they played against Envy, with kind of this aggression at mid from Fur from the A side and Cold from the B side. We see the double opping coming out from Cold and Fallen at times, very similar to what we saw against Envy. They also were able to get some big pushes from FNX over on the A side of the map, whether it be A ramp or Palace, which was just giving them so much information about what NIP was doing. And even whenever they had to concede mid-control, they were just holding the sites really well. Just played a super great lockdown CT side. Fur, very instrumental on dictating how they played mid, whether it was you taking mid control from Nip or when he conceded it, still playing A really well. So I think Fur was big here. I think FNX's pushes A were big here. I think Cold in general, the way he was playing towards the B side of the map, just really helped this team out. They just had a great game from pretty much the entire lineup. Even Taco, who I would say didn't play so well the other two maps in this series and struggled throughout the event, played really well here on this particular map against Nip to win it. Now, we see them on the T side win Pistol again. They do lose the second round, and they do lose the third as well, so they're from a force to Nip. And so Nip start to make a bit of a comeback as the money spirals out of control a bit here for LG. We did see a variation of their default after the timeout, where you saw FNX kind of playing that lurker role this time, as was mentioned in the past he would do at times, over towards B. You see Taco playing over towards A, which he is an entry fragger, so seeing him play towards the A bomb site, you kind of know in their head when you see that as a caster or analyst or whatever that means they want to go towards A because they have their entry fragger playing the A extremity while the rest are working mid control. You see the same thing happen with CLG when they use Tarek inside Palace, even though he's kind of an entry fragger, or whenever you see variations of Fnatic set up when JW's playing inside the Palace, where that is they want to trigger that side of the map. And so you saw them kind of do this setup a few times. They were able to get up mid, with Taco in the position over at A. They had one big round they actually got Cold into the window room, and he's able to get a couple of kills there towards jungle and cut off rotates and get a good B hit off of this. And, I mean, they eventually close out the game here. I mean, they had such a big CT side with 12, and then they won Pistol, so they only needed to find 3 rounds to close out the game. And you see them, after allowing a slight comeback from Nip, be able to accomplish that and close out the game, so they win the first map on Mirage. Then we see them play Cash, and Cash has always been kind of a weaker map for Luminosity historically. Whenever they came to the NA scene, they always seemed to struggle on Cash, but we saw them picking it up a bit towards, I would say, the last couple of months on online NA play. They were picking it up. They're starting to get some wins on Cash, looking pretty good, but still not a map that they're most well known for, certainly. Kind of hit or miss on that map, to be honest, and we know that Nip can play Cash pretty well, so I wasn't expecting much out of LG here. I thought it would be kind of a one-sided victory for Nip, but it's all but the case, as again, we see Luminosity win both pistols this game, and it gets them the 3-0 start when they play T-side here in the first half. We get to see their default, how they want to play this map, with Taco taking over that door position, which used to be Fur, I think, a lot at the time in the past. So you see kind of a swap there. Fur playing A main, though, so he's still a main part of entering over on the A bomb site. Then you see the rest kind of just playing A main or mid. Cold cutting off the rotates from the boosted position. So very similar to what they used to do in the past, which is just Taco just filling in over at Squeaky Door and FNX being a part of wherever the pack was going, so to speak, whether it was fighting for mid control or going for A main. You just you get an idea of how they want to play this map now. And we do actually see them go up 8-0 on the T side of this map in the first half, before Nip make a good comeback to win 6 of the last 7 rounds and make it a closer game. And then on the CT side, we see LG win the pistol, but they lose the second round, so this kind of kills their money. We do see a little bit of changes on the CT side here for this team. I think, you see Taco taking over as a B anchor, so I just kind of filling in the role, and FNX playing over at A with Fur. So you're getting an idea of how they want to play these positions. Fawn still floating around with the op. Cold still playing a similar position to what he played in the past, kind of being like a mid-B guy. So at least we're getting a look at how they want to play the CT side of this map. I just wanted to note that really quickly. Seemed pretty passive at mid outside of the op of Fawn at times. They did have some aggressive plays over on the A side of the map here and there, but otherwise quite passive, so I guess kind of similar to their old style. Really close game here. I mean, LG were up 15-12 at one point and could have closed out the game in regulation and get a 2-0 series, but they wound up losing the last 3 rounds, losing several small number situations. Get Right was just going off, winning a lot of clutches for Nip, and they get it into overtime, in which case we do see Nip take it 21-19. So very, very close game here. Was really surprised to see Luminosity even put up that good of a fight on Cash. But Nip does wind up grabbing it, and we go on to a map 3, which is going to be Cobble, which we already talked a lot about how they played Cobble based on their game against Envy, so it's pretty much just a repeat of that as far as the style that they play. But just to talk about it quickly, on the terrorist side, though they lose pistol, they get the second round. So again, talking about how successful they are in getting pistols or getting these force buys early, why not getting 9 rounds on their terrorist side? Again, having some great connector hits and in the drop down room, as well as just having that same strong B type of play that we're used to seeing on Cobble. And they get 9 rounds out of that half. So well done. Go to the CT side, they win pistol, they get a 3-0 start. So now they're up 12-6. And from here, they just don't give up any rounds. You know, they just close out the game 16-6. Very, very dominant victory to end the series against NIP on home soil. And just really well done. What can you say? And that's that. They eliminate NIP from the tournament. Now they're going on to play against TSM in the semifinals for a shot at the grand final. So just, again, a crazy run coming out from Luminosity. It's hard for me to express that just talking about it, but certainly it was insane to see them just beating NIP right there and on home turf in Sweden like this, especially how one-sided that third map was in favor of Luminosity. So now they play against TSM in the semifinals, and the first map, again, is going to be Mirage. So a lot of Mirage being played by Luminosity here. They get crushed in this game, though, right? I mean, they get beat 16-5. They only got 1 round on the terror side in the first half, so that's obviously just big when TSM's able to get a 14-1 half like that. TSM is on point, shutting everything down. LG had a couple of rounds where they were a close number situations, but they lost all these rounds. Like TSM were closing out all these 2v2s and 3v3s and things of that nature. Managed to get the pistol and scrape together a few rounds in the second half, but ultimately lose Mirage big, right? And so now we're going on the Overpass, which has been a good map from LG on NA soil, certainly. Like, whenever they first came to NA, it seemed like Mirage and Overpass were the 2 maps they really used to beat NA teams. Dust 2, also kind of included in that. But TSM is just known to be such a good Overpass team, and the way we just saw them destroy them on Mirage, which is another really strong map for LG, you think, again, this is finally the end of LG's run. But no, that's all but the case. We do see LG actually lose pistol and go down 0-3 and proceed to go down 0-5 here in the first half. So now it's even more looking like TSM's going to go ahead and just take this one. And this is one of the first times that they've ever had an 0-3 start to a half, pretty much the entire tournament. But they wind up winning 9 of the last 10 rounds on the terrorist side. Their default setup, still the same for playing stairs. We actually have Taco lurking outside of B in place to steal. He's more of an entry fragger, so this is interesting. We saw Taco being used a bit more as a lurker on this map, while the rest were just kind of working Parks, and FNX just kind of taking place of Bolts in this mix, or FNX, yeah. So they pretty much played Overpass the same as they always have. Very slow, methodical style, waiting until the last 30 seconds or so to execute, working the Parks, pushing back bathrooms, using these smoke walls on the A bomb site, but also mixing in these really fast, aggressive B hits, which is what they've always done. And they pretty much stick to that game plan with just plugging in Taco and FNX into the old players' positions. What can you say? I mean, Cold and Furwood is starting to get some really nice entries here towards the latter part of the half. Fawn also doing really well with the op, and just, pretty tight frag distribution outside of Taco, I suppose. So really, really well played. Then on the CT side, they get a 3-0 start to go up 12-6. When you're looking at their CT side, you did notice that Cole was a bit more dedicated to B, whereas before he was kind of a rotator between the sites. So they seem to have kind of shifted Cole's position a bit. Now FNX seems to take that AB rotator type role in place of Cold. And then you see Taco taking over at B, which is, a position that we used to see, the old guys from LG play on. So he's filling into that position. Again, just kind of getting plugged in. And then Fern and Fawn are still playing over towards the A side, per usual. And they're able to close out the game pretty quickly here. They wind up winning Overpass 16-6. They don't give up a single round on their CT side. So, another big performance here from Luminosity kind of shocked everyone. Like, they've been shocking everyone pretty much the whole event. So then we move on to Inferno, which of course we did see them play Inferno earlier in the tournament, where they actually beat Envy, having a big T side and being able to close it down on CT. So now we're going to see them playing as TSM, another very solid Inferno team, to try to see who's going to move on to the grand finals. And they start out on the Terror side, and again, they have a great T side. They get 9 rounds on T side. This includes winning pistol and getting the 3-0 start. So again, holding on to that trend of being very effective on pistols and getting these 3-0 starts. and they get 9 rounds on the Terra side. Is really well done here from LG. Again, just shocking everyone on how well they're playing against teams that are normally well known for locking down Inferno on the CT side. CT side, we do see them struggle a bit, where they only get 6 rounds, which is why this game actually goes into overtime. So a little bit scary there. They couldn't close the game on the CT side. TSM is fighting back really well. And TSM's also been known to be a pretty good T-side team on Inferno for sure. And they're able to prove that by doing really well here against Luminosity and get this in overtime. I would actually say this is a great map for Taco, who struggled throughout the majority of the event, especially against NIP in that series, and only had really one good map out of the 3 they played against Envy. But he played really well on this map, so this is kind of where Taco actually steps up and it becomes a big player. Rest also played really well, especially in overtime where it mattered most. You were seeing these guys step up and make some big plays. And in this series, FNX goes up plus 23 in the series. He was actually, I think, their top performer in the series. So this is, again, FNX proving his worth. We saw him really step up, particularly, I guess, whenever he was getting all these clutch rounds on Inferno against Envy. But now we see him just play a complete series against TSM, one of the most skilled, teams in the world, and he's putting up the best numbers of anyone on his team for this particular series. So again, just really proving that he was a great addition to this team, and just the whole team playing well, and they make it into the grand finals, which we'll now talk about, the grand finals. And then we will go into just maybe a little bit of a quick outlook on both teams going forward, as I know this video has always gone pretty long. So in the grand finals, we're going to play Train first. And this is a map that Luminosity, again, similar to Cash, never really been well known for. Yeah, they've gotten some wins on it, sure, but I think overall for the year, they're like 4-3 on the map or something on LAN coming into this. They've even lost to some NA teams that were underdogs on this map, so weren't expecting much here on Train. Probably didn't even really get to play it. They didn't get to practice at all. And Train's a very hard map to just pug, so wasn't expecting a whole lot here. But we see the first half, LG starting out on the T side, where they, again, win pistol and get a 3-0 start, win the opening gun round, and force Fnatic immediately to save, so they get a 5-0 start on the T side on Train. So this is big. They wind up getting 8 rounds on the Terra side, I suppose. Fallen having some nice op work. FNX and Cold getting some nice post-plant work after the bomb's been planted. So looking pretty good. You get to see the default out of Luminosity here. You see Taco and FNX just filling in for Baltz and Cold over towards Ivy, basically, on their T-side default. So again, just kind of plugging into it. Granted, they haven't had a lot of time to work on this map. That's probably why you're seeing them just simply plug in the new players in the old player spots. But you see Cole taking over more of an inner position where Steel was kind of playing previously. So, again, you see Cold actually changing up his positions a bit as Taco and FNX come into new roles. Now, we do see Fnatic pick up 7 of the last 10 rounds on their CT side, but LG still find, 3 more rounds to make it an 8-7 half. You did see Dennis and Olafmeister putting in some pretty good work with the double op set up inside the outer yard. Flusha was also playing a really good solo inner position, but they still wound up giving up 8 rounds. But they at least make a good recovery, right? When LG's getting a 5-0 start like that and you're able to win 7 of the last 10 rounds, that's a good recovery. And it's a close half, 8-7 here. It's still anyone's game at this point. But then LG, you kick over the second half. Now they're on the CT side. They get a 2-0 start to go up 10-7, but Fnatic are able to find a third round bye because of a bomb plant, and they're able to take it by winning this 3-on-3 in the outer bomb site. And now you see the game shape up a bit closer. On the CT side, you're seeing that Taco is kind of playing inner in place of Steel, while Cold is playing more towards Ivy in place of Bolts, while FNX is kind of taking over Cold's spot in the outer yard. So you're getting an idea on how they might play their CT side Train. We do see LG immediately win that round after Fnatic got that third round, and now it becomes 12-8, and Fnatic has to save, and so you see LG really just close out this game pretty quickly. They only give up 1 more round the entire game after Fnatic wins that third round. It's 8-2 half, and they close out the game in a pretty one-sided fashion, 16-9. So this is, again, LG beating Fnatic, first map of the series, and just looking super strong doing so. Cold, Fallen, and Fur all with a pretty big game, but Taco and FNX aren't that far off. For Fnatic in this particular game, you see Flusha and Crims are the only ones to go positive. JW and Olaf, who were great this entire event. We really talked about how JW was in a bit of a slump at Cluj and such. He really set up his game We see Olaf, he winds up winning the MVP award, and he does so deservingly, as he had, a super crazy KD ratio and rating and such. But they actually both kind of struggle on this map on Train in the first map of this series. So just something to think about. Now we go into the second map, which is going to be Cobble, where this time we see Fnatic starting the Terra side. And LG again win pistol, but then they lose the second round. They're forced to double save, and Fnatic able to go 3-1 off of this. We're now getting to see Fnatic's T side for the first time on Cobble, and we still see that Olaf continues to play that long B platform position per usual. Flusho's still playing that similar style of kind of lurking towards the A side of the map when they're focused on B hits. Dennis just seems to fill in as part of this long B hit, or whichever side is the focus. If they're trying to take control of long A, he's just kind of part of that pack of players. We do see in this game that LG actually tied up the game 3-3. We actually see it, Fnatic then going up 4-3. We have a bit of a trade around to make it 6-4, but then Fnatic reset LG's money and wound up taking an 8-4 lead and eventually closing out the half 9-6. So it's a pretty scrappy first half here, but it's still Fnatic coming up on 9 rounds on the Terra side. We do see Fnatic being able to put together a good mixture of fast A splits as well as just heavy B hits. So pretty diverse in how they're playing the map, and they're putting up a solid T side in 9 rounds, right? Now we go on to the second half, where Fnatic won pistol to get a 3-0 start to go up 12-6, and they also won the opening gun round to go up 13-6. So it's looking like they're going to close out this map in a pretty one-sided fashion. But LG take a pause, and they're managed to win 3 rounds in a row after that to make it 13-9. But then Fnatic finally put up a really big hold on B, where we almost have like a team A, so everyone just rotates well, gets some kills. They're now at 14-9. We do see LG fight back with a couple of rounds. FNX had another big clutch moment here with a 1v2 at B to make it 14-10. They forced Fnatic to save. Now they're up 14-11. So it gets pretty scrappy here at the end. But we do see Fnatic at this point closing out the last 2 rounds and just winning the game. Just finally, it really came down to B. Like, they just started defending B really cleanly the last couple of rounds, and they wound up closing out the game 16-11. So we see everyone playing well here from Fnatic. I think JW is the only guy who played weaker here. You got 22 for Flusha, 21 for Dennis, Olaf and Krems both at 19 kills apiece. So just getting a good performance out of pretty much the entire lineup. And they take this map, and they did so pretty comfortably. They were never in danger. Like, they never really gave up the lead. They were pretty much either at a tie or in the lead the entire game. So pretty dominant showing here from Fnatic. And so now we move on to Inferno to see who is actually going to win this thing, right? And we have Luminosity starting out on the CT side in the first half of this game. Again, LG winning the pistol and getting that 3-0 start. I feel like that's a broken record at this point. And we do see kind of a big thing happen in the opening gun round. I think like Y and K actually brought this up on the analysis desk, where you see in the opening gun round, Luminosity doing a triple lane setup on their CT side, but no one's watching apartments. And so Olaf's able to get out of apartments and get a couple of kills and help open up the A bomb site. And boom, here you see Fnatic striking their first round the Terra side. Then a few rounds later in the 9th round, we see another aggressive apartment setup, this time from Luminosity, where you got Fallen playing inside the apartment with an op and Taco kind of backing him up. But Olaf goes through Boiler and just gets those 2 kills, and they overpower the A-bomb side again. So Olaf, just the way that he's playing the apartments on this Inferno match, he's just dominating people. He's just beasting kids, right? And Dennis, Krems, and JW are just this hit squad controlling mid a lot of the time, while Olaf is still working apartments, and they're using that to either swarm A or split B based on what they're getting at middle, with Flush still lurking over towards Banana. So very similar style to what we've seen to them on Inferno in the past, just in Fnatic's history as well as in this tournament. And they wind up making it a 9-3 score. We do eventually see LG close out the last 3 rounds to make it 9-6, finally stopping some of these B hits that's fallen with Op and Cold, finally putting up some good defenses at B to make it 9-6. So respectable half, but certainly a big lead for Fnatic to get 9 rounds here, right? Now this is where we see the side switch, and actually Fnatic changed up their CT side. So remember, when they played against Inferno against Virtus Pro, we saw Krems playing towards Pit and Dennis anchoring the B bomb site. So a big swap there for Krems. But now, in this game, we see Krems go back to anchoring the B bomb site, and we see Dennis taking over kind of Pronax's old spot at the apartments in place of what Krems was doing against Virtus Pro. So we see them actually change their CT side mid-tournament. So that's kind of interesting. Not really sure what that's going to lead to, but just figured I would note it. We see Fnatic taking the pistol, and Now they're up 10-6. They wound up getting a 12-6 lead. And then they push it to 14-6 before LG finally get a good B take in to win a round to make it 14-7. But then Olaf has a big clutch on a B retake with Flusha putting up some nice initial holds. Playing like at new box at the back of the site, since Olaf was kind of playing more towards A with the op and Flusha was kind of filling in for him. So we saw Olaf certainly changing up his position a bit here and there. But Flusha was doing really good to cover for him and get these like initial 2 kills to kind of slow down the B hit, allow Olaf to rotate. And then Olaf, like I said, had this big clutch on a B retake to make it 15-7 and reset LG's money. And then Olaf comes up big again to win a 1 versus 1 to actually close the game after, again, a good initial hold from Flusha. When it was like a 3v1 basically from him, and he gets a couple of kills to put Olaf into a 1v1, and that's how Fnatic's able to close out the game 16-7. So pretty dominant win here from Fnatic to win the grand final. They get that $100,000, maybe kickstart a new era of Fnatic. And then Luminosity, though, what a great run. To go from getting 16-0'd to no one expecting much out of them, with them just making a roster change, to actually making it all the way to the finals and having the best result they've ever had in their entire careers in CSGO for all these guys, and the organization, of course, as a whole. So really, really cool story. Now I'll just do a quick outlook for both teams. I'll start with Luminosity. Just going to hit some quick points about what their future looks like. So obviously this was a great event for them given the situation, and compared to what else we've seen from them this year, this was amazing for them. And now they're going to get to go on and do a boot camp for the next week or so leading up to the ESCA ESL final. So they really get to kind of solidify their team a bit more, get some practice in, maybe figure out exactly what they want to do for the whole map pool, and that's good news. Cole continues to just be a major star for this team. He just gets better and better every event, while Fur still maintains a really good level and still has some of these Fur God moments and games and whole games. So that's great for them. Now, Fallen continues to be a great IGL for this team, continues to be a good opera for this team. We know that at Cluj and CEVO Season 8 were some rough times for Fallen where he really dropped the ball, but he's looked fine ever since between the IM, San Jose, IBA Power Cup, RG, and now this event. His only bad games of this event was when they got blown out by Fnatic in the first best-of-1, and then one of the losses they had to Envy, which was kind of a blowout. So yeah, still saw some big multi-frag rounds from him, and in general, good smart play. And I will say that when you watch him play with the op, he really reacts well to like being boxed in pressure when people close the distance. Like, he reacts well. He winds up getting these multi-frag situations out of rounds where you suspect he should only be able to get like 1 kill or none. And he has a knack for doing that, and that's certainly good to see him perform so well with the op. I mean, he's really proving to be certainly one of the best operas in the NA region in all the league plays, probably the best or the second best opera in NA, since they're competing in CEVO and ESCA. I know they're not North American, but they compete in our region, and he is certainly either right below Skadoodle or battling Skadoodle for the top op spot in North America, and he seems to be one of the better operas even in the world at times. So again, awesome to have that type of firepower when you got Cold and Fur also involved in this team. I would say FNX had a great event. Like I said, he had similar numbers to Fur when the event was over. Had some really nice clutch work, especially against Envy on Inferno, as well as a couple other instances throughout the event. And he just seemed to mix in well in the trading game. He's, like I said, he's part of the entry pack. He's kind of the second or third guy in. He seems to be well in playing these duels and playing these trading situations. So I guess the point I'm getting at by saying all this is this team no longer really lacks for firepower. I mean, this team was always known for having a great tactical framework, being able to develop, even push the meta on certain maps and how maps are played or how certain executes are used or certain styles of play. They have always been good in that regard, but they at times lack for firepower. Like in the beginning, it seemed like there was only Fur that really performed for this team when it came to fragging. But then the team picks up Cold, and Cold's developed into a star and opened up Fallen to be dedicated opera. He's really improved his fragging game a lot, and now you have FNX coming in and playing super well. So wow, this team doesn't lack for firepower anymore, and they can still be great tactically. So this is a good combination for this team going forward. They could really do some big things. I expect that this won't be the only top 4 finish that this team has going forward if they maintain this lineup and things progress well. Now, I will say that Taco's debut was slightly below average, but we certainly saw some hints of promise, especially since this is his first LAN event against big competition. I mean, he did okay. This dude's only been playing since June of this year, it seems, from what I could tell. Maybe he's played in some smaller stuff in Brazil prior to that, but most of the play I was able to find for him was only, 5 months ago, and he started really playing against like NA teams in bigger leagues for the first time in September, which is only 2 or 3 months ago, and he's 20 years old, so he's a very young guy. So again, I didn't expect much of him. He just baptism by fire. He got thrown to a big stage very, very rapidly after only playing some smaller NA events prior to that. And playing in some smaller, he wasn't even playing in the pro leagues in NA. He's playing like in ESEA, like main, like, so not even the semi-pro league Premier, and then they were playing in CEVO main. So, I mean, he didn't even have like any pro league experience online before he came to this event. I guess you could say the same for FNX and CSGO, though of course FNX has a rich history in the entirety of CS. So I wasn't expecting much, and he did fine. He did his job as an entry fragger. He went in first. He wasn't scared. He didn't play scared, at least from what I could tell. And I think if he develops well and he gets coached well and they get some practice in, he can wind up being a good guy for this team. So not much to say there. When it comes to their map pool, we still see Mirage being really good for this team. They went 2-1 at this event, including beating Envy and NIP, but they did have a big loss to TSM, but still look good on Mirage as they always have. We saw some good wins on Inferno against Envy and TSM, so they continue to prove that they're a strong Inferno team. The Overpass looked great against TSM. It's always been good for them in NA, so that's good news. Now they seem to have 3 pretty good maps here between Mirage, Inferno, and Overpass. Didn't expect much out of them on Train, and they had a big result though here against Fnatic, so maybe Train's something they can work on going forward. Kabul, I guess, was their least successful map at the event. They went 1-2, but they looked decent in their loss against Fnatic. They still seem to show some good play, so I think Kabul, they could still develop that map into a good map for them going forward. Even their cash map that's always been weak for them, they put up a good fight against NIP, and they had the obvious blow off to Dust 2 on Fnatic, but I expect in the future they'll be able to patch Dust 2 up. So I think their map pool looks amazing going forward, and they have the firepower now. They still have the good strategy and tactics. So I think, like I said, this team, this certainly won't be their only top 4 finish with this 5, I don't think. So now just to end this video, we'll do a quick outlook on Fnatic going forward. Looked good at the event. They won the event. They were super dominant in the best of ones to get to the semifinals by just crushing NIP and Luminosity on Dust 2. Not much to say there. Beat VP 2-1 after losing the first map of Mirage. They come back and take care of business on Inferno and Cash. So they get a little bit of pressure. They get a little bit of a challenge, and they respond to it well by closing out the series by winning the last 2 maps in a pretty comfortable fashion. And both those maps, they still had those big CT sides, those big lockdown halves on the CT side. The only exception to this was, I guess, against Luminosity on Train and maybe Mirage against Virtus Pro, but all their other CT sides look great, especially the CT sides on Inferno and Cash against Virtus Pro. Had some pretty good T sides, right? They had that big T side versus NIP on Dust 2 in the group stage. They had 8 in the Mirage loss against Virtus Pro. Then, they did find the other 2 maps to close out after having big CT sides. They had 9 on Kabul and Inferno versus Luminosity. So, I mean, they did struggle on Train, but in general, their T sides look fine. So, as far as people being concerned about whether or not they'd still be able to read rounds well on T side and be able to put up good numbers from that side, they did. So, I don't know if that concern's completely alleviated because they weren't challenged so much this event, to be honest. I feel like they didn't get pressured too much on their terrorist sides, maybe outside of their flopping on Train against Luminosity in the grand final. So I don't know if we really got a great read on them, but overall they look good. Olaf Meister at this event, plus 59 with a 1.35 rating. This is his best event since Face It Stage 2 in June. So for this guy to have his best event in 5 months at this event, that's really big, right, when you have your star player Olaf being able to put up those numbers, and he definitely earned his MVP. That's not to say he's ever done bad. He's been doing amazing all year. He's had no bad events, but it was cool to see him, set almost a new record for the first time in a long time as far as the numbers he put up. For Dennis's debut, this is actually one of his worst events of the year when you look at what he did with Gamers 2 and Kingwin. He had a .89 rating. He was -9 for the event. You saw him really struggle against Virtus Pro on the first 2 maps, though he wound up doing fine on Cash when they closed out that series. And he did fine the rest of the event. Not really a big deal. He certainly does add firepower to this team, which was seen to be the goal of the move. He seems to have done that. He seems to mesh well with the team. He's a skilled player. Yeah, he did struggle this event. It's his first event with the team, so I'm sure it'll get better over time. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I mean, I thought he did fine. Now, Flesha being the IGL certainly hurt his performance a bit fragging-wise, but he still ended the event at a +19 with a 1.11 rating. Maybe a little bit of stat padding in the best of ones. helped, and he certainly did struggle a bit in the VP series, but I would say that he still did okay fragging. The team seemed to run well, and so you got to say that, success, I guess, is kind of the best way to put it. We already talked about this. JW looked much improved this event. We know he had a bit of a slump at Fnatic Champion of Champions, the PGL Season 1 Finals, Cluj. He looked rough in all those events. We see him opping a lot less, rifling a lot more, still playing a similar style. We're just not opping as much and changing up his positions a bit with the new lineup. But he had good form this event. So, yeah, I mean, it's really cool to see JW even kind of change positions and change what equipment he's using. But still put up really good numbers at this event. So hopefully this is a sign of good things to come for JW going forward, that his slump is finally over. He's finally back to putting up good numbers, and that'll certainly help out this team as they progress into 2016. And what to say, I mean, Krims was Krims. Played really well, plus 44, 1.17 rating. Played amazing, as Krims normally does. Even though he had to change up some of his CT side positions, I guess he swapped back on Inferno, but he did have one series where he played over towards Pit. We also saw him change up his positioning a bit on Cash, where now he's kind of anchoring over towards the A-bomb site, whereas in the past he was kind of playing towards B. So and also Mirage, he's playing a new position where he used to play an A anchor role, now he's playing a B anchor role. So even though he swapped his positions, it seemed to have no real effect on his ability to play. He's still a great CT player, still helps out on their T-side attacks, and had a great event. Krims was Krims. What can you say? One of the best players in the world, and he still was, despite having to shift around a bit how he plays. But I would say this event, in general, they weren't challenged so much, so it's hard to get like a really great read on them in this event, but you're still seeing the signs of the old Fnatic, still having these lockdown CT sides a lot of the time, still capable of putting up good terrorist sides, similar style of play, and they had success by winning the event. So this is a great event for them. I'm curious to see if it'll continue. And yeah, that'll pretty much does it for this video. Just wanted to talk about the two teams that made the finals, the two teams that changed their lineups, how they did this event, what did we notice from this event as far as changes that they have made since new players have come in on how they play maps or how people are positioned, all that good stuff, as well as talk about their outlooks going forward. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot, and subscribe for more.